You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Amanda, and I'm joined by my two friends, Stephanie and Tyler. We are a trio of coaches on a mission to ignite a collective movement where authenticity, self-discovery, and purposeful living take center stage. Each episode, we go live in the Kaya way. Kaya is an open invitation to show up authentically and vulnerably. It's a safe space to allow ourselves to be worthy and enough now. It's a celebration of our individuality and diversity. So, welcome to the show. We're happy that you're here, and we invite you to join us in today's conversation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Afternoon, evening.
There's something different here today, isn't there?
There is. There's 4 of us here today.
How exciting!
I can't believe I'm your first guest. This is so cool.
I know.
Yeah,
welcome. We're very excited to have you here today, Troy.
Welcome. Yes, we're so happy that this is finally happening. We've been planning having guests on for over a year. We're not kidding, over a year. And Troy, maybe you could share this or you can attest to this. We did actually reach out to you like a year ago.
Yeah, I remember when you were looking for a collection of guests, and I remember, going, hey, yeah, raise my hand for it. And then a long time passed, and I thought about you guys a couple of weeks ago, and then all of a sudden, days later, hey, we're ready for guests. And I'm like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
I just
it took us a bit longer, that like stage 2 of the process. Yeah.
Tenacity, though, you stuck with it, right? You set your goal, and congratulations, you're here.
Well, and it's so cool, like, to the vibrational, like, attraction of, like, you thought about us, and then, like, a few days later, you heard from us. And I was like, I think that's such a powerful testimony to kind of those frequencies and that energy, that universal energy that we can all tap into, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like, get ready, buddy. They're coming.
We're ready. Our doors are open. We're ready. Let's go.
Yeah.
But it's
All
exciting.
right. So how is everyone today? What is your Kaya vibe? Amanda, do you want to start?
Oh, goodness. Gosh, today I'm excited for a new week. I'm excited it's a new week and kind of the fresh start. I looked at my calendar and I've been trying to be more intentional with I'm gonna, go into my calendar because I send out my calendar link. So things show up on my calendar and it's a surprise. So I've been more intentional with going to my calendar and blocking breaks, because sometimes I see things in my calendar and I'm like, oh, I think we were kind of talking about this last week. So it really brought my awareness to it. So I'm excited to kind of see this new, and I've done it in the past, and then I just kind of other lifing stuff got busy. So it wasn't something I was super intentional with. So I'm excited to see kind of have a busy week, but it looks different than normal, or quote unquote normal, whatever that is. So I'm very curious to see what this week looks like.
I like to use the word common instead of normal. That's what the common thing is. Rather than normal.
Language, it's so fascinating. We talk about this all the time, right? It does make a difference. What about everybody else?
Yeah. Kaya vibes. I'll go.
Yeah.
Kaya vibes. Today, I think I'm just arriving with a lot of curiosity and fun and connecting with you three. Just kind of ready to explore and see what this does. I used to be in radio for 25 years. And so being a part of, conversations like this was just what I did every morning for 4 hours. So it's just nice when I get to hop on and do these little podcasts and stuff, it's like a little throwback to my radio days. And so it's just neat to be back in this environment. And I'm a very curious soul and love exploring things. So thanks again for having me.
You've come to the right place. Curiosity leads the way with us. We say we always are trying to figure out what rabbit hole we're going to go down and really explore and deep dive. So That's exciting. I am checking in this morning. Recentered is my word. I was sharing backstage. I found out on Friday that I did not get this job that I was really, really, really hoping for and really excited about and like that potential. But you know, I did realize that job would have split my focus, would have split my attention, and would have pulled me in two different directions. And so I think it was the universe just gently reminding me that, hey, you know where you're going, you know what you're building, you know what you're doing, just keep going, just keep going. So I'm checking in today, like recentered and reaffirmed and ready to bring on the new week, as Amanda was sharing.
Mm-hmm. More language in my mind. I'm like, ooh, like, you know, this like thought of rejection being redirection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love when those things happen. In the moment, sometimes the rejection is like, it stings. Let's be real, it stings.
Totally.
But when we can see like the bigger picture, it really can be super empowering.
Yeah.
How about you, Stephanie?
I think I'm a mix of like all of you. I'm so grateful and excited to be here today. But I also had a moment of centering this morning where I was like, yep, this is what I'm focusing on, and I'm not gonna get distracted by other stuff. So I was putting together some audios for a program I'm writing right now. And I just noticed, because I recorded those audios on different days, that of course the tonality and the energy was a bit different. And of course my mind went into, oh yeah, then you could re-record this and do that and da. And I was like, nope, this is good enough, right? This is like, it doesn't need to be 120%. And then I just, kept going, and it was all good. That was very cool. A great experience to have. Yeah, that's me for today.
That's the hardest skill to learn, I feel like the good enough skill of like just accepting it as is and not thinking that you have to go back and redo it, or because I've found myself in that space here recently too, as I'm also working on building out a new program. And I go back and I look at the content and I'm like, ooh, I could have done that differently, or I could have said it this way instead of that way. Like maybe I need to throw it away and redo it. And like, how many times do we throw things away and like redo them when it would have been fine as is? Like it would have been good enough to get started. And I think that's one of the hardest things, like as humans, that we like have to like overcome, is that perfectionism and that space of like, oh, this is just good enough. Like it's good enough to keep going and build the momentum. I love that, Stephanie. I love that you tackled that.
You're already throwing like so much wood into the fire right now.
I know,
where we
I'm
could have
sorry.
like juicy conversations. But first of all, let's introduce Troy properly to our audience. So I just want to share with everyone, and then we can definitely go back to that, Tyler. Like that was so good. What Troy is all about. So Troy is a master practitioner of mental and emotional release therapy, which helps remove emotional baggage and outdated programming in a fast, gentle, and permanent way. How great is that? And clients come to him for help with anxiety, depression, trauma, and people-pleasing habits. So from those four things, who here has any? I do. I have two. Definitely the trauma and definitely the people pleasing. So that's why we are so excited to have you here today, Troy. And do you want to kick us off maybe by sharing your story, how you actually got to this place of doing this kind of impactful work with people?
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction, and happy to expand on that. And definitely we'll touch on the perfectionism thing and talk about how it's just an element of programming and simplify it. For myself, I think the journey into what I came to experience of mental and emotional release, it began when anxiety started to, I actually didn't think I had anxiety Just, I'm a human being, whatever you feel. And then when it turned into anxiety attacks, when I started having anxiety attacks, I went, what the heck is this? And, thought I was having a heart attack for 45 minutes. And then someone was like, that's a panic attack. And I'm like, oh, great. This is cool. And then that became a thing. And so I started to, reach out and get help. And so I started to see a therapist. And one of the biggest things, that was communicated to me was like, okay, so this is your life now. You're going to have to learn how to manage this, right? And so you can get good at managing this. And I don't know what part of me it was, but the stubbornness, I'm just like, how is this my life now? No way. I reject it. And for 3 years or 2.5 years, I was just learning to manage it. And some days you're great at it, and other times you're just exhausted. You can't do it, and you're still experiencing anxiety. And I was using meditation and medication and yoga and connected with nature. And so I have all these things that help me manage the anxiety. And then a lot of times with an anxiety, depression can get connected to it as well. I feel like it's almost like my system was just so hyperactive that it was just like, I can't handle this level anymore. Shut down. Depressed. Bouts of depression would come in, almost just to recoup, regain energy to be normal again. There's our quote unquote normal. And then, the anxiety would rise up. And so it would be this kind of pattern that would go. And so I was like that for a long time. And then one day I met a friend for lunch, and she had struggled with depression a lot. And I could tell something was different. And I'm going through the checklist, like, no, her hair's the same. Her wardrobe's the same. I ask her about her family. That's all the same. Home life is good. Ask about the job, no, nothing's changing there. I'm like, everything's the same. So then I went, okay, what did you do? What's going on? There's something different about you. And she just smiled. And she's like, I got rid of my depression. And I was like, this is monumental. Tell me more. And so she starts communicating with me and tells me about mental and emotional release. And my first question was like, does this work with anxiety? Please say yes. Please say yes. And she said, well, you can talk to my life coach. And my next reply was, what is a life coach? I've never heard of this. But give me the number, please. I'm going to reach out. And so, then I leaned into and learned about more of it. And the power of M.E.R, the shorthand of mental emotional release. And then, I signed up for it. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And the transformation was just so profound because it taps into programming. So, for example, like the perfectionism, I'll tell you a story of a little kid who came home from school. He had 98% on his test. Right. And so he's coming home from school. He's so excited, and his dad's home. And normally his dad's working shift work, right? Might not be home, maybe home. So, well, today he's home. So running home from school, so proud to show 98%. Dad takes the test, pulls his son in with a loving hug and goes, wow, 98%, son. That's so great. Do you know where you went wrong with the other 2%? And right away, the kid just shrinks like, whoa. Ready to celebrate the 98, not focus on the 2% where it all turn into mistakes. And the kid tries to like weasel their way out of dad's embrace and like, okay, I need to get out of here. And in that moment, an unconscious decision was made that 98 is not enough. Right. And what else might the kid be thinking? Right. Like, oh my goodness, I need to be perfect. Right. If I want acceptance, mistakes aren't allowed, mistakes are bad. And so that triggers emotions, that triggers behaviors. Kid grows up to go ahead and, try to avoid all mistakes, becomes a quote unquote perfectionist, and has a lot of driving behaviors that way and an energy towards it. And then when mistakes do show up, because no one's perfect, right? And so it's like, shrink, take no ownership of mistakes, try to deflect, try to, what can you experience when you're trying to get away from mistakes, right? And so that is a story of me. I did that when I was a kid. I remember the moment where I was like, oh no, I need to be perfect. And so that's an example of programming, where you get this idea. And so for myself in that moment, as you do a little M.E.R work, it becomes down to, oh, I'm not good enough. So that was the driver. And so you can just picture, like, if you're carrying a deep-seated belief that you're not good enough, how is that going to affect your patterns of thought? right?
Mm.
Became an overthinker. How is it going to affect your emotions? Like I get really attuned into energy, and there's emotions you're trying to avoid, right? Shame. I felt a lot of shame when I make mistakes, and
Mhm.
it would drive me to be better. And like, hey, I became a high achiever. Hooray, I guess. But at what cost, right? And then it affects your behaviors, of course. And so that's how that big ripple effect can go in there. And so anxiety was the same. Like anxiety was just a part of what I was carrying of the programming.
Mhm.
I like to invite people to see anxiety or depression or even trauma responses for what I feel they are. And it's not something we have, it's something we do. Your body, your mind is doing anxiety. You don't have anxiety, you're doing
Mhm.
anxiety. You don't have depression, you're doing depression. You don't have trauma, you're doing a trauma response. And so what that allows us to do is just go through the deeper layers and go, oh, it's just programming that's creating this trauma response. It's just programming that's led me to this depression. That's led me to anxiety. It's led me to these people-pleasing behaviors and all these, responses to things that we're actually doing. And so it's a source of programming. And so it's really, really cool that you can go in, find the programming, and then just gently remove it. So that way, it changes the ripple effect of your patterns. And so, for example, for my one, I did the M.E.R breakthrough process. I never had an anxiety attack ever again. It's been 4 years.
Wow.
I haven't had depression. It's been 4 years. No more perfectionism, no more people pleasing. That got gone. And
Wow.
so these things just rapidly change because the programming was driving all those patterns. You remove the programming, you update it, upgrade it. And now it's like, oh, another one for me was like, I don't matter, or I'm a burden. That was a big one for me. Like, I'm a burden. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to bother people. It became people pleasing, right? And so once I removed that, we're like, I'm not a burden. Like, no, I'm a human being. This is great. And so just the ripple effect, my thought patterns changed, my emotional patterns changed, and my behaviors changed. And it can have a really fast effect that way. And it's so, yeah. And so that inspired me. And I was like, how does more people not know about this? So I went into my coach, I think a week after I experienced the M.E.R breakthrough. And I said, I want to help people like experience this, because this is so freeing. I was taught and told by my therapist and my doctor, you got to learn to live with this, man. You got to cope. You got to hope that it doesn't get worse. You got to hope that, maybe it eases off throughout the years that come. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. And so I was so happy to discover a process that allowed you to actually be free of it, for real. So yeah, I just want to go and bring it out to people. And that's how I got into coaching. I went, all right, goodbye 25-year radio career. It's time to move on. I want to affect people in a different way.
Wow. What a beautiful, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And because there's so many things in there even that are so extremely relatable. And I feel like I'm pretty sure I've shared in the past of this experience, but I had 98%, and it wasn't actually
same story.
Right? Wasn't necessarily an experience with parent in particular, but there was other things that led me to that pattern of oh, well, 98 isn't enough, right? And it's so powerful when we do come from take those because it's subconscious, those programs are so subconscious sometimes that we actually don't even realize what's happening and how they're even getting programmed, especially because that's a beautiful example of being a boy and you're young and you don't even realize these things, right? And so when we can unpack and reprogram, oh gosh, what a game changer.
Yeah. And in that moment, I'm not sitting there going through consciously going, okay, 98's not enough. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to, I'm not in the moment. My conscious mind is just like, ooh, I'm going to go to my room and I don't want to be around here anymore. Let's go distract myself. Let's go numb myself in some way. Let's go play Lego. Let's go do something, right? But my unconscious mind is making decisions, making meanings. It's what it's built to do. It's built to assess what's happening and make meanings out of it. And we don't consciously know what the meanings are being made until later. You can see the patterns that are showing up going, oh, there's things happening that I can go and change, and it'll change all those patterns. It's really, really cool. Yeah.
So I'm just like so curious. So from what you were describing, it sounds like awareness is the first step. So you got to figure out, okay, what are those patterns? And so that you can, shine a light on them so that you can do something with them. What happens after that?
What happens after? Yeah, great question. Awareness is massive. I usually tell people, hey, you can get this gone in 3 steps. And the first one is awareness, becoming aware, and what I call the seed of it. A lot of people refer to as like get to the root. I actually want to go deeper. I want to get to the seed, because where do roots come from? A seed. It starts with a seed, right? And so you get down into the seed of it, and I often picture things as like a big tree. And so let's say I was an overthinker. I'm a perfectionist. I'm an energy sponge. I'm experiencing anxiety. I had anger issues. Has depression, sadness, hopelessness was, a big state. So I had all these myriad of things. I had this massive fear of flying, phobias and stuff. And so I called it like the problem tree. So like all these things are showing up, the pattern tree. And then you can kind of like prune those branches with different techniques, and that's good. Hey, any work you do it. Right. But this process, I learned from is like, oh, you go right down into the seed. And so you get the seed, and when you just release that, it's like it just removes the whole tree. And so your shifts can just happen just like that. And so step 2 would be what I call healing, which is like, there's 3 steps to healing. You don't have to wait to step 3 to heal. Hooray. It's step 2. And so awareness is getting to the seed. Step 2 is removing that seed and all the emotional baggage attached to it. Like all the emotional imprints. Like if I had a belief that I'm a burden, like there's emotions attached to that, and just keeping it locked in, right? And so you remove the emotional baggage and the belief, and then that's step 2. And then what you're left with is just this deep, profound connection to yourself. You have internal healing. You have more alignment. I've had clients who have so much more poetic and beautiful when they say it. like, Troy, how do you feel? I'm like, it's awesome. It's amazing. And they're just like, Troy, I thought that I was going to be the new me. And instead, I just feel like the true me, like for the first time in forever. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what it's like. I wish I could have said it that way myself, but it took me to connect with this person. Like another person said, oh my God, I feel like I'm meeting myself for the first time. And it's so comfortable, right? Because it's authentic. And so I think this speaks well into, that's why I was excited to join you guys, because, authentic expression and living is so a big theme of this podcast. And so, yeah, this is just a great way to, it taps into that, connecting to your authentic self. And so that way you have that internal healing now. And then the third step is to go live it and to do the external things that support the internal healing you already have. And this is where like meditation comes in, right? And journaling or breath work or like all those tools, and then putting in boundaries, changing your environments and relationships and recognizing all of those things, learning how to process your emotions so that way it doesn't turn into baggage. That way it doesn't turn into all that programming. So that way you're not getting to an extreme point of anxiety or depression. Because those are not normal states, that normal word, right? Like a lot of people say, oh, anxiety is normal. I go, ooh, common. I'd be like, think of your anxiety alarm as like a fire detector. If your fire detector is going off every day, is that normal? Is that a good thing? It's like, no, there's something going on that you want to shift in that programming. And so your anxiety or depression is the same way. It's something your system's doing, and you can go into kind of turn that off and go, hey, you're not reacting to what you're designed to do. And so the ability to experience anxiety, depression, and trauma, that's always going to be in your system. Your system is built to do that. It can be helpful if you know how to approach it and then deal with it, right? But what I've discovered is once you learn how to, go in and, become like the boss of your brain and process your emotions, it's like that baggage doesn't build up anymore. And so you just stay in a nice homeostasis state, right? You kind of reset your nervous system and through this M.E.R process. And so it's like, boom, here I am. And you ever overreact to something? Anyone?
No.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. What a human experience that is, right?
I mean, not on the outside, but on the inside.
Yeah. So sometimes an overreaction is just a misinterpretation, like, oh, I thought they meant this and that, was a boundary cross, a violation, and no, they didn't, so it's okay. But sometimes an overreaction is like, oh, this just happened, like crying over spilt milk, right? It's like, oh, this just happened, and you should be angry. You should be 3 out of 10 angry. That's normal. But you shouldn't be 10 out of 10 angry, but you are being 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 angry. And so that overreaction, baggage, the past is coming up, all this emotional stuff and old programming that you're carrying, it's driving an expanded thing. So when you remove that baggage, now you can trust your emotions more, because your emotions are signals telling you, things about your environment and what you're experiencing, and you can engage it. And so now, I remember the first time I got annoyed after doing this M.E.R process, and I was like, that's kind of annoying. And I just paused. I went, oh my God, I'm actually like 2 out of 10 annoyed. And that's what it should be. And I was so excited because I'm like, oh, I would have been like, all huffy and stuff and making it seem like it was a bigger deal than it was. And so it's just a beautiful thing. And just notice how a lot of processes, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just slower and can be more susceptible to self-sabotage, is working from the outside inward, right? So you start with step 3 of like, oh, I'm going to change my environment. I'm going to, try to put in boundaries. I'm going to try and change my behaviors. I'm going to try and do all these things. And the goal is to kind of get inward and heal and change your programming. So I want to get that belief gone. Eventually I want to, do something different, to be something different, to believe something different. Well, you can flip it around. You can get rid of your old programming, install those better beliefs, and then it starts working from the inside out, and it's just much more faster and gentle and thankfully permanent. Otherwise, I'd still be searching for a process to make it permanent. But based on what I've experienced and all the case studies and all my clients, like it's really cool. It's permanent. Yeah.
Wow. It's very rare when we're speechless and when we don't have an immediate thought, but I'm very deep in reflection right now, thinking about my own journey. And I think what you just said about how a lot of times it's external, trying to, fix the external and then experience the internal. That was very much my story for many, many years. It was something that I had always struggled with my entire life was body image. I was always labeled the fat kid on the playground. Like, this was an identity that I carried around for many, 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 many years. And it's so interesting. You were talking about the true you and experiencing that true you feeling. It's so interesting because inside, I always didn't feel like the fat kid. Although I was labeled that, I was, people told me that, they made fun of me, they teased me. And so I kind of absorbed that identity. But when I here within the last year and a half, I've done a lot of inner work to, again, release a lot of these kind of things. And it's so fascinating because when you do kind of, as you say, remove the seed and you're kind of left with this hollow, wholeness, if you will. For the first time in my life, I was like, oh, I never thought I was the fat kid. I never thought I had this identity. It was always inside, I knew my true self. But externally, I was placed all of these labels and all of this crap that I was carrying around, the baggage, as you would call it. It was just oh my gosh, when you release that and you let that go and you realize that internally you have the power to do that. And this is, I think, the most amazing thing about it. And when you say that it can work fast, it really can work fast. Because it's simply a choice. It's a choice to say, hey, I'm letting this go. I'm removing this. I'm releasing this. And I'm not going to carry this around anymore. And when you do that, it's so profound. Because in the last year, I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of that internal release. And I am now, my external environments and my habits and my routines and things like that, they now mirror how I've always felt on the inside. It was just the other way around was so treacherous. It was so hard, like, and that's why I think why so many people have a hard time developing habits. And I'm going to use the gym routine as like the classic habit of like, I'm going to go to the gym. Well, you can't really go to the gym if you don't like being in the gym. And there's like a lot that goes into that. And I think it's so amazing when you start inward and you work inwards to then mirror the outward. I think that's revolutionary. And I think that's what changes. That's where true transformation comes in. That's kind of like my thoughts here.
Yeah, I'm glad you've experienced it. Like, it's just so amazing. I've like for decades I did it the other way because that's the common way of going. Hey, let's start with the outside, change these things, and we'll work our way into deeper transformation. And hey, if that's the approach you use, go for it. Like, I recommend any kind of transformation method or healing in that way if it gets you to where you want to go. And a lot of people say, well, how can it happen so fast? The brain and the body are designed to help you actually heal fast, especially the brain. It's actually, you just got to know the tools. I always ask people, how long does it take you to get from one coast to the other? And the answer is, it depends. Depends on what? Well, what transportation am I using? What mode of transformation are you using to heal? And so it's all based on tools and techniques. If I want to see a tree in my yard, I'm like, I want to get rid of that tree. Well, if I got a handsaw, it's going to take me some time. But if I got a chainsaw, it's going to be faster. So tools and techniques help you do it faster. And so we can heal those old wounds and those trauma wounds and all those things, all that programming. You can actually update it quickly based on just tools and techniques, and using the right ones to use if that's what you choose to do. And then when we do it the other way, when it's the outside in, you'll find that, I mean, we've all run into it, right? It's like you make progress maybe either for a short time or even a long time. And then all of a sudden, it seems like we call it life happens and we get derailed, right? And it's like, but what's really happening there? Like self-sabotage. And the gym example is a great one. I had a client who tried to keep losing weight and, getting into a certain sort of fitness level. And she would stop and start. And she's like, what's going on? And then she was like, maybe this is programming. And so she came to me and we got, found out the programming was like, it's not safe to be seen. And, if I'm fit, I'll be all at risk, So she like, if I look a certain way, I'll attract more attention, especially from men. And I don't trust men. And so therefore it's dangerous. So that was the programming that she was carrying. And by going to the gym and trying to get in shape all the time, she was fighting her programming. She'd get so far and progress, and then her unconscious mind would be like, that's close enough. You're almost to the point where you're going to be attracting attention. So let's go ahead and sabotage you. Why don't you go and eat that meal that you actually don't want to eat? Let's go enjoy some junk food here. Why don't you go and do that over there? Skip a couple of days of the gym, And so the unconscious mind is protecting her, right? Going, no. We can only go so far. So let's retract. And so every time we're trying to work from the outside in, this is where we want to kind of do the tiptoe approach, right? Where that kind of coaching is like, we got to do this slow. You need to. Otherwise, it's like a tripwire. You're going to trip your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind's going to go, whoa, don't. No. That's not us. We can't do this. It's not safe. And so then we sabotage ourselves, and then we go, must be something wrong with me. Like, I guess I'm not meant to, have this that I want. And so it's just really interesting when you can learn. It's like, oh no, I'm running into that because it's just programming, and I'm, kind of fighting my own programming. And you can, work around that, but you can also just go in and change the programming. So now that behavior, for this lady, we got rid of that bad belief that wasn't helping her anymore. And she went, okay, no, I feel safe. I can trust myself to, interact and protect myself in these other environments with other ways. I don't need this belief. And now she's free, and she went and lost all the weight she wanted. She's in the fitness level she wanted, and didn't have any self-sabotage anymore. So it's really, really cool just to tap into that and discover the power of programming.
I have kind of like a two-part question to that, or maybe two different questions. So is there a way, the way you are doing or using M.E.R for yourself right now, is there a way when you're noticing a situation, a pattern, like you mentioned with this woman, like she's stuck in this constant loop of losing, gaining weight, or being fit, not being fit. Is there a way for ourselves in those moments to check, okay, does it have anything to do with my programming? Can I maybe find we call it disempowering belief that's behind it, like for ourselves? Is there a way? And the other question is, would you say that you kind of always have to find the root? Like, do you have to like name it or remember that moment in the past? Or is it also kind of like you just know that at some point you were starting to become or identify as a perfectionist? Is that enough for the healing?
That's a great question. Yeah, especially that second one. Ooh. Yeah, so the first one, in the moment, some things you can do. A question I always like to pass on to people, it's like, ask yourself what you get to avoid. Like, let's say you're people pleasing, like you're saying you struggle to say no, you feel guilty, you feel shame, you feel like you're not being a good person or whatever it is, right? And, I've said plenty of yeses throughout my life that I was like, I don't want to say yes, but I'm saying yes. So that was programming, right? And so it's like, what do I get to avoid feeling in that moment? I get to avoid feeling this, and that. And so that can conjure up some emotional baggage that you're kind of carrying, and you don't feel safe with those emotions. And then you can say, what do I get to prove? What do I get to believe about myself? Or do I get to avoid believing about myself? So let's say someone's asking me for something, I don't want to do it. And it's like, but I'm going to say yes. And what do I get to avoid believing about myself? That I'm a bad person, that I'm not caring, that I'm, all these things. And so by doing it, then I'm proving that I am a caring person. I do have a big heart, that I am trustworthy, that I am, a good friend, that I am. So filling all these, I'm a good mom, I'm a good dad, filling all those blanks. Right. And so it's all these things that are driving the behaviors. So you can start uncovering some baggage that way. And then to answer your second question there, do you have to identify it, and name it? Sometimes. And whether you do or don't, it's kind of up to your unconscious mind. And so as I've done this now for over 4 years, I've really played along with it and around with it. And the more you use these techniques, the faster you get at releasing stuff. It's so cool. And I find a lot of the times when people come to me, like their unconscious mind wants them to connect, like when we're going to that deepest seed to release the whole pattern tree, right? The connecting to the seed belief or core imprint is really, really helpful. The unconscious mind kind of wants it, almost a way so you know what you're tapping into, because it's serving a purpose. Like when I was carrying a belief that I'm a burden, it has a positive intention to keep me safe in some way. Is misguided, or it might have been actually really important to have that belief when I was a kid, to keep me safe, but now it's outdated. And so you got to be able to sometimes connect to it, so that way your unconscious mind feels good with letting it go, because it's all serving values. Our deepest level of programming is our values. And so, like, say in this case, maybe safety, right? And so that belief is keeping you safe. Remove it, but you also still want to be safe. So your unconscious mind has to connect with, other things to do that, to help you achieve that. And so sometimes you do have to connect to, the core of it, of what it is, and identify it. And then there's other times you do not. So an example of that would be, I call her Elevator Girl. I remember meeting her, and she was terrified of elevators. And what happened was she was trapped in an elevator when she was 8. There's no adults with her, no older siblings or anything like that. She's trapped in an elevator, and she was there for hours. And so, no one's there to say, don't worry, elevators get stuck. You're going to get out of this. Might take some time. Let's play some games together. Right? So that's happening, and she's trapped in the elevator for hours. She gets out, and, I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious, but it's like, no more elevators ever again. Understandable, right? Do not put ourselves in that situation again. That's not safe. And so the programming is in her. And for 30 years, 25, 30 years, she's held on to that. Even when she was in her 20s, she lived on the 23rd floor of a building, and she took the stairs every day. So
wow,
huge phobia, huge trauma, buns of steel. But like, that's commitment to that belief, right? And that program. That's the power of programming. And what's interesting, She had saw therapists about it to try and get past it. Didn't work. Some people were like, exposure therapy. So, you need to just summon the courage and go aboard the elevator. And then when you're going to be fine and you realize it's not big of a deal. And so every time she kind of imagined that, she's like, no, I won't. I'll be relieved that I survived that one. And the next time I might die in there. You never get out again. So a lot of exposure therapy and stuff. I'm not a fan of it myself. There's certain things where it can work with, but like for me, it's like, nah, especially trauma stuff, like you're just going to make it worse potentially, right? Like what if she went and got trapped again? Like everything's verified. So the system would be on overload. So yeah, so she did a technique that only took like 5 or 10 minutes, and it didn't have to connect with like, okay, what's the belief, that you created that's driving this behavior, this phobia, this trauma response. And she just did a nice gentle technique and released it, whatever it was, the energy that was trapped in there. And then afterwards, it was just like, hey, how do you feel about elevators now? And she was just like, oh, I kind of want to go on one. And I'm like, you want to go down? Because we were in a hotel convention center. And she's like, do you want to go down hallway? There's an elevator. She's like, yeah, let's go. So walk aboard the elevator, and she's just cool like the Fonz, which is maybe too old of a reference for you guys, but for a Gen Xer like me, I'm on the so, yeah, she's just super cool in there and super chill. Like she didn't have to summon up courage, to go and like, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to tackle this fear. So the fear was gone. The programming had been changed and shifted. And she's like, this is easy. This is great. And I remember talking to her a little bit afterwards. It's like, everyone's calling me elevator girl because all I want to do is ride the elevator now. And so, yeah, you can tap into, that stuff and release it without having to identify it per se. Most of the stuff I release when it comes up for me, my unconscious mind is like, no, you don't need to know what it is. Just go ahead, do the technique, release it, and you're good. And so it's awesome. And then sometimes the learning will come to you and you're like, oh, that's what it was about. But you don't have to have conscious learnings in order to heal. That's a big thing that I, came across was I used to think, because being an overthinker, if I could just figure this out, if I can just think this, if I can just make sense of this, then I'll be able to heal, right? Like it needs to make logical sense, and then I'll be able to feel better and heal and forgive and all these things. And it's like, that creates so much pain. It takes so much time. And the beautiful thing that I discovered is like, once you just go in and release it internally, then the learnings come. It's like, oh, you heal and then you'll understand. You don't have to understand to heal. You heal and then you understand. It's really crazy beautiful. Like it's really cool. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely.
The way you've been talking about all of this is like, I just keep like, I look at the spectrum and I look like, or like a dial, and I feel like a lot of our emotions are so extreme, we're either like super excited or really, really sad or, like whatever, like there's such an extreme, like the overreactions as we were talking about earlier. And as you're sharing and telling these stories, like all I'm seeing or feeling is like this like dialed down kind of like calm space, like Elevator Girl, for example. Like there wasn't like this, it wasn't this like rocky moment where she got to the top of the stairs and like she just got on the elevator.
Yeah.
She just got on the elevator and went down or up, whatever direction you guys were going. And it was just this like, oh, okay, no big deal. Like it was almost like very anticlimactic, I think is the word that I'm trying to say here, of like
bad television is what it is.
Yeah.
There's no big, oh my God.
There's no rocky moment. Yeah. It's just like cool, I got on the elevator. And I think like, something that I've coined, one of my phrases is the work that we do as coaches and this transformational work, to me, it's like unsexy, meaning it doesn't have that like rocky moment. It's just like, oh, cool. Now we get to go on with our lives and like be different now and forever changed. And so powerful, but like at the same time, it's almost oxymoronic because it's like very anticlimactic. It's like, okay, great. She got on the elevator, 30 years of never riding elevators. And then all of a sudden she got on, she went down, and, now she's kind of free of that. And it's very anticlimactic, but so profoundly like transformational and massive. And I don't know, I think it's kind of ironic, here we're talking about these like major life transformations, and they're actually very subtle, and it's like soft. And I don't know what I'm trying to make of that, but that's just what I've just keep getting as we're having this conversation, is this like, oh, it's really not as, I mean, it's incredible. I don't even want to say that. It's incredible, but it's also, it's simple. It's easy. We, I think as humans are programmed to make it harder than it has to be. Can you kind of speak to that? Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, especially let's say something that's big and traumatic that happens, right? You're like, like it was a big emotional event. And so you expect the release of it to be another significant emotional event. And often what can happen is just people go, yeah, I feel okay. Like I feel good. I feel lighter. And that's it. All they all they say, yeah, I feel like that. I feel lighter. Something's different, but they can't put their finger on it necessarily. And they won't know for sure until they go out into the world and experience it. Right. So, yeah. And all of a sudden they're living different. I've had people who, especially when you do this for like releasing from the inside, and I think this speaks to what you're talking about, they won't even notice the change. And so I had one person who was massive people pleaser come to me. We do this M.E.R process. And then afterwards, we meet a week later. And I said, so what's different? And he's like, nothing. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. No changes whatsoever. And he's like, no, not really. And I go, what about that problem? How you're like always struggling to say no, right? You'd say yes, you'd sign up for things, and then he would then later bail on it. And it was just wrecked his integrity. His yes meant nothing. Some people, I can't trust him when he says yes anymore. It's like, forget that guy. And so he's like, oh my goodness. The very next day I said no to this. And then I said no to this. And then I went, oh my goodness. Yeah, I said no to that. And then you know what? I said no to that. And I didn't feel any guilt. I didn't feel any shame. I didn't feel any pressure. I said no here. And he started making this whole list. All of a sudden it came into his conscious awareness. He's like, I would have never noticed unless you asked me. And I go, so why did you not notice? What was the difference? And he's like, it just felt so authentic. There's no resistance. The program has changed. And so a lot of the times, when you go in and you change that deep transformation, people might not even notice right away of what has changed. You may know her. She's a fellow coach in our community, Shamika. She really struggled to like even put herself out on the social media. Like she wants to build this coaching business. She's like, every time I even like put a little sentence or two on Facebook or something, I second guess it and I rewrite it, and it's got to be perfect, and it's never perfect. And then then I'll post it, and then I'll walk away. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, no, that's not good enough. Not good enough. And she goes and deletes the post. And she's like, I'm doing this all the time, man. And so we do the process, and then I meet up with her about 3 weeks, a month later. And I said, hey, what's new? What's going on? She's like, oh, great. Nice to connect with you. I'm actually just getting ready to go to another city here. I'm actually I'm a guest speaker. I'm doing a speech in front of 200 women for such and such. And I was like, wow, that's a big change, isn't it? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I went, well, what do you think 1 month ago you would feel about doing that? And she was like, oh, I forgot about her. I forgot about her. Oh my goodness. Yeah, she would not like this at all. She would have said no. But here she was getting ready to write a speech and do a speech. She's like, I'm just excited. Like, this is going to be so fun. She's ready to share all these words and do a whole speech rather than, where she was terrified to even put out a sentence on social media before. And so, yeah, those transformations, when they get in there, they can just shift you because the resistance is gone. And so it doesn't come up to your conscious awareness, and you just move about your day. I had another gal who, had chronic anxiety, just waking up and had anxiety, started worrying and was nervous about stuff and overthinking and over preparing. And that was how she woke up every morning. And then when we did the MER, I checked in with her a month later. I'm like, hey, so what have you noticed? And she was like, oh, things are good. Yeah, things are really good. I think my relationships are improving. I'm getting along here. I don't feel as stressed, like the stress reduction's way down. I'm calm. I'm da 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 da. And I said, so is your chronic anxiety gone? And her eyes just went, oh my goodness, it's gone. I didn't even stop to think if it was still there or not. Wow. And then, started connecting with all the things that she had released. Like, my perfectionism's gone. I'm not people pleasing anymore. I'm not doing anxiety. I'm not doing depression. Like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And so, yes, you can miss the drama of it sometimes because you just feel so authentic. Like, you're just being so authentic. This is the true you that you're connecting to. And I think that speaks to what you're saying there, Tyler. And I love the spectrum thing you talk about, because I started to see, less things in black and white, on or off, and started seeing things more on a spectrum of shifting things. And so you can adjust that programming to dial it to the level that's working for you, right? So, just like you said, it's like, you're going to feel fear. That's helpful. It's there to help you. You're going to feel nervous about time. You're going to feel a little angry. You're going to feel, hurt. You're going to feel sadness. These are all good. We don't want it to be dialed up so high, right? You can get the programming so your nervous system is reacting on a more level programming of what it's, designed to do, rather than going to the extremes.
Maybe one last topic question thingy. I'm wondering, would you say that the mental and emotional release technique is something that everyone would benefit from? Or would you say that, like you mentioned earlier, that it depends on what you need, wherever you are at in your life, pick the technique or pick the kind of mode of transportation that feels aligned for you right now? Because what I'm getting from you, a lot of what you mentioned in the beginning about how this works, I was just reminded of my psychotherapy I did last year, and I thought, yeah, this has a lot of overlap with therapy, the way that I know psychotherapy, at least. So I'm just wondering, where do you stand on this? Would you say that this is a universal technique that anyone could benefit from, or would you say that it really depends on where you are at in your journey of releasing those things?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. What the answer is, it could work for most people, depending on the state they're in. It really depends on, first, two things: a state. Are you ready to let go of stuff? So an example, it's like, if someone's really hell-bent on being stuck in victimhood, this is not a process for you. I can't do this to you. I do this with you, right? And so, been there. I've been in a state where it's like, I'm not ready. I'm going to hold on to my victimhood for a while. I'm not ready to let go of this stuff. And so once you're ready to move past that, then this technique, and so what that does, it's called just taking ownership. It's like recognizing that you play a role in creating what you're experiencing, right? And so when you're in a sense of victimhood, you're just going, that happened to me, that their fault, they need to change, and that person did this, and that can never be undone. And you're right, those events can't be undone, but the meanings that you created from it, the emotions you're still holding on to protect yourself, running that trauma response, that is you holding on to it, right? So if this pen was pain, and I go, here, take this pain, and you go, okay, I don't want it, but I'm holding it. Oh, you took it. You're holding on to it. You have the power of letting it go. And so it's not absolving anyone of anything they've done or anything like that. It's just recognizing, oh, I actually did play a role, an unconscious role most of the time, in creating what I'm experiencing now, the pattern, right? And so I can now go in, change the programming, and release it all and be free of it. And so not everyone's ready to do that. They're not ready to go, no, that's all them. And I was in that state before too. And so once you're ready to move beyond that, then this process definitely can help you. on the most extreme cases. They tested it. This has been around since the 90s. Actually, the core of it is, started in the 70s and 80s. And it's worked for like PTSD, CPTSD, which is like, phobia on steroids and stuff like that. And the reason why it works on those things is because trauma is just programming. And sometimes people don't like me to simplify it like that. It's like, no, Troy, trauma is the worst. It's, you're diminishing it. And it's like, well, I experienced it. I had childhood abuse trauma. And so, and I don't diminish it. Like, it'd be like walking into a really loud room, right? And it's like the volume is just crushing your ears and you're like, your sensory overload. That's really extreme, right? It's like trauma, like, it's extreme. Well, you got to hit the off button on the stereo and, you're okay. Like, the solution's simple. And so getting down into the programming is like, that's just driving. You're just doing trauma. You're just doing anxiety. You're doing depression. You're doing people pleasing. You're doing perfectionism. And so you can just get into there and be able to remove it. And so some people want the drama that, you spoke of, right? I've had people come to me and like, oh, I want to think my way to this. I want to figure out, I want to crack the code. And I went, this is not the process for you. It's no, go find someone else. You could talk about it for hours and months and years and do it. Like, if that's what you prefer, then go do it, right? If you want a slower method, go do it. But if you want this, then, then if that's aligned with you. So that's the second caveat. It's like, what is your preferred way of healing? And so if you want it to be more gentle, if you want it to be permanent, you want it to be fast, then, this is the good candidate for you that may feel really, really aligned with you. And you'll be surprised at how gentle it can be. I healed my trauma without even talking about it. And that was a beautiful thing, because I wasn't willing to talk about it with my therapist. I was like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And so I never talked about it. But then when I got with my coach to do M.E.R, I healed it without even talking about it. I had one client, Julie, she experienced this traumatic event. She was taken hostage by an ex.
Oh my goodness.
And she was held at gunpoint for hours and she thought she was going to die. And so from that day forward, she just, there's that spectrum thing, dial it up, like, hyper vigilance, right? Like everything, every sound was, she was sensitive to, any energy in the environment or people she was sensitive to, just everything. She was on high alert all the time. And so when she came to me, she was just like, yeah, I'm experiencing anxiety I'd like to get past. And that's basically what she had shared with me. And so we got to the core of it, found the seed, we released it. And she texted me about 4 days later. And she's like, can M.E.R get rid of trauma triggers? And I just smiled and go, why do you ask? And she's like, my triggers are all gone. I'm not hypervigilant anymore. I'm not. And then she started to tell me the story. That's when she finally told me the story. She's like, I was taken hostage. This is what happened. This is why I've been anxious. This is why. And so why that happens is because the seed is always planted before it blooms. And so the trauma experience was like bloom, right? It's like, oh my God, everything is in bloom now. That would be like giving all the credit to the sun for opening up a flower. It's like, no, the seed, it started with the seed. And so, yeah, we just went in, we removed the seed, and that's how it just removed her trauma without us even talking about it. Yeah. And so if people like that idea, some people are just not ready to release their stuff. And a real clue I have is like when I share something like this, because it sounds unbelievable to so many people, right? Because we've been taught healing takes time. And it's like, you're gonna heal your whole life. It's like, if I'm a well-educated person, like, Troy, you're the smartest person I know. Does that mean I have no room to learn more? Of course I do. You can heal fast. Is there more healing you can do? Of course, you can heal all life, just like you'll learn all your life. You can, the faster you heal, the more you're going to heal over time. So it's really, really cool. And a real cool sign of it is when someone says, that's impossible. And right away, I know they're in a fixed mindset. Right? And so like, that's impossible. They're closed off. And I always invite them. I go, what if you change that statement to a question and ask, how is that possible? And ask it with as much skepticism as you want. Just wrinkle your face and go, how is that even possible? Because just by even asking that question, you open the door just enough to maybe go through and go, wait. and you can learn something different, you can observe something different, and then eventually you can experience something different. And those are the 3 caveats of what we know to be true, right? So, yeah.
Oh, this is so incredibly powerful. I'm like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, this is amazing. Like looking at time, I'm like, why do we have to wrap up? I want more of this. And this has been so amazing. And I think what's so cool is this, you know, sometimes this can be super subtle and sometimes it can be super obvious and like where these, what the seeds are, what they look like, or where, you know, those patterns were created. And so it's always, you know, and it's just having me reflect on like, yeah, what other like little seeds are planted that you may not even like know, or there's those ones where you're like, oh yeah, it's in full bloom. I see you, like, you know, and being able to navigate your like, I love the garden analogies, like anything, like I think it's yeah, I just love them. But as we're wrapping up, Troy, I'd love to just like, because we believe so much here in our Come As You Are mission, and we're all about the Kaya vibes and really how important that is to just show up as you are. And so love to like hear from you, like, what does Kaya mean to you?
Really listening to yourself first. We have a lot of programming that blocks that, right? You're not supposed to. We put our needs to the side. We put the needs of others, you know, ahead. I remember asking one client when she came to me, she's like, my top value is love. And so that's going to be the driver, right? That's her deepest level of programming, love. And I go, cool. What does love mean to you? You know, putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Let me guess, you're a people pleaser, right? Like, yes, I am. Well, of course. That's your definition of love. It's inevitable. You got to change that, right? And so, yeah, just tapping in, listening to your emotions when they're coming up. They are there to communicate with you. They're kind of like messengers, an invitation to go deep. I treat them like a bat signal. It's like, you know, what is the bat signal communicating? Go and find out what Commissioner Gordon wants. And so you get to go think of when your unconscious mind, when it senses something in your environment and it's like, oh, I want you to be aware of this. Emotes a signal that we call emotion, right? And so basically by suppressing emotion, ignoring stuff like that, you're closing yourself off. You're suppressing your unconscious mind. You're like, no, you're not important. Guess why we have a low sense of self-worth, that it's not 10 out of 10. Guess why our self-love is lacking. Guess why our self-trust is lacking, right? Guess why we're lacking self-belief, because we're just shut down. We've been taught, you know, it's part of our cultural upbringing and staying safe and, you know, maintaining the peace. And so just being able to go in and just get curious and start listening to see what comes up there, giving yourself the ability to do that and then start expressing that and recognizing that your behaviors are not your identity. I think that was a big one, you know, like, so for me, when I was that kid who became the overthinker, I'm an energy sponge, I'm a perfectionist, you know, I'm this, I'm that. Once I healed, I just realized, no, I wasn't an overthinker. I wasn't an energy sponge. I was building a lot of energy. I was doing that to environments. Oh, not an energy.
I think
sound.
Yeah, sorry, the audio. I think you have to move something happened with your microphone, Troy. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, there was like feedback or something, like.
Just the last 15 seconds, not.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's back. Okay. Now it's okay.
Well, whatever I was saying wasn't meant to be heard today.
We got.
Whatever it was incredibly powerful. This whole conversation is just like, oh my gosh, like I don't want this to end. I'm not ready, guys. Can we just sit here all day?
Can we just do the 3 of us, since this is our first guest? We're celebrating. Thank you for being our first guest.
Yes.
I would love to just take like one minute, not even, but like 10 seconds each to just say, like, what is your number one takeaway from the conversation today? Because for me,
I thought it was. Oh yeah, go ahead first. Go ahead.
For me, my number one takeaway is that you've got to take ownership of this process. Like, this is a very, like, you have to go in and and say, I'm ready to heal, I'm ready to let go, I'm ready to release, like whatever that is, and take an active participation in this process. That's, I think, where the power really lies, is in that, like, the ownership of the journey and this whole process. That was my big takeaway from all of this. Yeah.
What about you, Steph?
I know. Mine is that so much of the pain we experience, the root of that is in this weirdly intertwined relationship of identity and what we believe. So when we act on, I don't know, whatever our identity is, and we think, oh, that's who we are, but it's actually just the behavior, like with the people pleasing or the perfectionism, for example, but it's not actually at our core. And that, this just causes us so much unnecessary pain, and to kind of like go and divorce that, like that's where so much of the magic happens. That's mine. What's yours, Amanda?
Oh, for me, I think it's actually a reminder of the healing journey. And for me, often this, because I'm so in the thick of this and I'm so fascinated and I'm in these conversations, we're doing this podcast, like my whole life is just surrounded by like learning about different modalities, learning about like how to grow and how to expand and evolve and all those things, that I can often watch other people in my life, and it's challenging when you've chosen the path of healing and you can see other people that you love so much and you can see them struggling, and you're like, and we talk about this as like the Kool-Aid, right? Like, just drink the Kool-Aid. Like, I promise you're going to love the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Or you're sending them the bat signal and they're like, what? Like, what is that? Like, like you really just want to like shake it into them. And that's just not their journey. And so I'm often reminded of this. I'm like, they're on their journey, you're on yours. Whatever mode of transportation they choose, allow that to be okay for them. And that's what I'm taking away today. How about you, Troy?
What you just said there, when people say, Troy, what's the downside of mental emotional release? And I just sit there and go, well, I don't know. Like, I struggle going, what? How could there be a downside? And then one day it finally hit me and went, oh, so the downside is now that you rapidly heal a lot of stuff and you get really authentic, you're going to go out into the world and you're just going to see baggage everywhere. You're going to see programming everywhere. You're going to see, like, oh my God, if only they just knew that it was this and they could just do this and they could literally like be gone and like so much. And so I, see people who are suffering from anxiety. Like, so I don't work with my friends. That's just a boundary I have, right? But I got friends who suffer from anxiety and they've been doing it for years. I'm like, you literally can get rid of that in a day or two. but it's like they, but it's just not. So I see them deal with it, and I just stand back and go, "That's their journey." And so all of that is really, really can be tough, at first, and you might get, step in there and interject where maybe you shouldn't, and go, you just got to go do this, just go do this, and they're just not ready, or that's just not their path, because there's many modalities to do, to get to where you need to, and some are faster and whatnot. But yeah, so just being able to have compassion and be at peace with that and go, that's them, I send them good vibes, support them, but don't try to come in and become the rescuer or fixer. That could be sometimes tough. A lot of people go, oh, I talked to my friend or my partner or so-and-so, and I told them to reach out to you, Troy. And then so many times they never reach out. And I just go, yeah, because they're not ready. You got to share your experience. And then if they go, tell me more, just like I did with my friend, right? Like, she said, yeah, I got rid of my depression. I'm like, oh, tell me more. Like, fix my anxiety. Like, she knew that I was ready.
Oof.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Well, if anybody watching or listening is ready, then please reach out to Troy. We'll include all your links to get in touch in the show notes. So if this feels like, a good time for you to do some rapid healing, then please reach out to Troy. And thank you so much, Troy, for being here and sharing your genius with us. This has been so amazing. What a best first guest experience.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say that. That was so cool. I'm so pumped right now. Troy, thank you so much for being willing to be our first. Well, you didn't even know before, but thank you for
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah. And I just felt really drawn to you guys because you just appreciate authentic expression so much and living, right? And it was like, yeah, I wore so many masks and shedding them, it feels so good, right? And so, yeah, it felt really lovely to talk with you guys.
Yeah.
Well,
Amazing.
all right, y'all. Well, if you want to connect with Troy, all of his information will be in our show notes, so you can find him
somewhere
down
here.
there, around wherever it ends up on your screen. So go check him out, and we will see you next week for another wonderful conversation. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversation going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another deep conversation.